Dude,
Holy
I've
man, it's
got
been too long to see you in the face. Like
it has, man, it
it's
has.
it's been a long time, dude.
I got some stuff here with me that I'm gonna show while we discuss stuff, but I think I'll take you back to a bit of memory lane yourself.
Oh, I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
got some nice tidbits.
I was walking with my wife, walking the dog tonight, and I was like, we've been talking about doing this for, about a month or two, I guess now, right? But then of course with Clyde Hill passing away, it's kind of like, okay, I think we need to take some time and kind of, show tribute to Clyde. Like, here's a guy that, I don't know that I don't know that there was another person in the last 25, 30 years that did anything more for the indie community in terms of managing bands, getting them great deals, booking shows. Um, so I guess let's start there, Corey, and kind of like what Clyde did for your world, and I know he helped a lot with the bands that you were in and stuff, and huge loss to the
Whew,
community.
man, I mean, how do you sum up somebody that for the last 30 years, if you played a show in Vancouver, it was through Clyde Hill and Magnetized Productions, period, full stop. I mean, I met Clyde. I was trying to think if I met him when I was 18 or 19, and it was right when I started Azimyth. And of course, our bass player was only 13 at the time. And Clyde was still getting us into shows like, oh man, the OB was our first show in White Rock.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
That was an experience. Um, God, the Piccadilly pub was probably our home turf. He and I forget the name of it. He had, I don't know if he had spent some money with another partner and they kind of changed the name and renovated that place a bit. But there was a story that somebody had fallen through the third floor down to the first, and that's sort of when it stopped. um, but if you remember, like, I mean, Malone's, um, God, he just started getting into country, somewhere in the mid 2005. Um, they're just the amount I the amount of just what do you call them, posters that you could look back on that had his name on it. I don't think there's a person single-handedly that put on more shows than Clyde Hill. And the amount of times that he was out of pocket for a show, the if acts of service are a thing, that was Clyde Hill to a T. He never asked for a damn thing. That guy was just, I saw a lot of bands, a lot of young, foolish kids that would come up to him and say, hey, man, what could you do for me? If I just need somebody to hear me. And I used to shake my head and laugh. And I would take him aside and I was like, man, first of all, you don't know who you're talking to. Second of all, you need to just shut up and listen to what he has to tell you, because the knowledge that that man had about the music industry, what to do, what not to do, I can fully say, and we can get into that, I didn't always listen to Clyde, and
Yeah, yeah.
he didn't, and he didn't scold me, or he didn't, it wasn't in his, emotive palate to tell you, hey Corey, you're really effing this up. It was more like, Junior, why did you do that? That was his nickname for me too. He called me Junior, and I'm gonna miss that. But he just had a way of telling you what you needed to do, and you either listened to it or you didn't. And if you didn't, he wasn't offended by it. He understood that everybody has to go through the process of making their own decisions. But man, when I knew that he was sick, we talked for a bit. He used to always send, political messages or funny memes out of all hours too. You'd get something like 1 in the morning and he'd
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
chuckle. Um, we all got those, and it's cool to see all the things on Facebook and the memories people have shared.
I was actually just gonna bring that up. It was so I don't know what the word is, but it's like refreshing, I guess, to see and read how many people's lives that he touched, right? Like I read the one from, I don't know if you caught this, with Larry and Willie. Larry, the old CFOX morning show.
Yeah, no, I didn't hear this.
He started off the post with something along the lines of like, "Without Clyde Hill, there may not be Nickelback."
Fact. Fact.
Right?
And I know that Chad asked him to be in the film. In fact, Clyde had asked me to come down to the Roxy. He asked me if I wanted to come down and meet Chad, and it was just, I think, when Chad was starting to do it. I have a sneaking suspicion that's Clyde turned him down because he knew he was sick. That's just me hypothesizing. I don't really know for sure, but knowing the man, I'm guessing. And Clyde didn't really want the attention either. And him and Chad, whatever happened between them and all that, it's water on the bridge and has been for 20 something years.
Oh,
But I
yeah,
would,
long time. I've seen those
yeah,
guys together and like hugging and like that.
right,
Yeah, that I don't think that that had been an issue for, yeah, like you said, decades.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then I never asked Clyde. It was none of my business anyway. But he was always respectful of every band that he always wanted to share his wealth and his knowledge with everybody.
Hmm.
If he was going to go see Chad, he was calling everybody and saying, "Hey, do you want to come down and meet Chad?" And he knew that it was more about networking. It had nothing to do with, oh, there's this famous rock star. It was, let me put you in the same room and maybe you can learn something. And that's what made Clyde so damn important with the scene. It's such a huge loss. I can't understate that enough.
Yeah, it feels like it just feels so weird, hey, to
Yeah.
think like you won't see him around anymore. He is part of Vancouver's live scene. It feels so weird to think that.
The last time I saw him was in 2018 at Moody Ales before I moved to Prince George, and he came down, and I told him that I'd buy him a beer for once for all the beers he bought me,
Yeah, yeah.
and him and my wife were busting my chops a bit, which is just typical Clyde. If he wasn't making fun of you, he didn't like you.
Yeah, yeah, true
So I
enough.
took it as a compliment, and man, I just it I don't think I think the people that knew him, the people that if you were in a band, you understand how important his legacy is to the outside people. I mean, if you're gonna do a documentary about the Vancouver scene, you got to start with Clyde Hill. I don't know how much money he lost. I used to see bands go up to him and say, "Oh, do we get paid for tonight?" And Clyde would say, "How many people did you bring?" "Oh, none." "Well, I'm out of pocket. I printed the poster. I did the time. I did the radio stuff."
Right.
And it's, I'm hoping that those people learned from those lessons. Maybe they didn't, but Clyde did it because he loved the music scene. He loved Vancouver. He loved the talent, and Clyde he knew damn well what a hit song and a good band was. If he gave you a bit of advice, it wasn't he never spoke to you in a belittling way. He never talked down to you. He always spoke to you as you were a peer. I mean, as he got older, as we all do, I'd see him with these younger bands and see, that 19-year-old kid as myself when I first met him, and all the things he's asking him. I'm like, oh man, you just need to listen. But I'm hoping that the way that he would speak to them, it didn't change how old you were. The knowledge that he put forth every time somebody asked a question was always thoughtful, was provocative, and it was always to the point. I mean, if I would call him out, I still call him. Being up here, I would ask him for advice, or I would send him a song and say, "What do you think about this?" And he always would give me details and feedback, and he would never hold back. He's a giant, man.
Yeah, man, you missed that the rickshaw show.
Yeah,
That was something else, man, to kind of, if for some people it literally it felt like I hadn't seen them for like a decade, and like music's bringing people together. Clyde Hill is bringing people together. Of course, at that time, he was still alive at that point.
Right.
But there was rumblings of people talking about, he doesn't look very good, and it's probably not very long before he does pass. And um, really cool to see, what he brought together, and all these people, like, it just felt so good, dude. You missed such a cool night. Not
Oh,
just because it was jar and noise therapy, like that
yeah.
was insane to see that again. But it just, yeah, no, there's something about that night. Like I just felt so good. Like my heart felt so full.
Oh
So
man,
good.
Jar had broken up when I had met Clyde, and I believe that they had just broken up. And when I heard that this event was going on, I was kicking myself in the pants. It would have been rad to have seen them, and I know everybody else that showed. I know who was there.
Like
I know
everybody was there.
everybody, and Clyde had a rough go the last few years too, not just because of his illness and how sick he was, but during COVID, he had lost two of his brothers and he wasn't even able to bury them. And they
Oh
were in
no.
the States. And that just devastated him. Like he was so sad about that. And he had another, I think the other brother was in LA. I imagine he'll be there on Mondays, the funeral service in Surrey. I wish I could be there. I'm glad that we're doing this. I so appreciate this, to talk about him. And, I, I figure should we dive into a bit of Clydeisms here?
Well, hell yeah. I mean, I was just gonna say, like, what do you got? What's in your tickle trunk of
Oh
Clyde's
man,
here?
I got a few things. So I'm gonna start with a 19-year-old. Well, I wasn't 19 at the time, but I'm gonna fast forward to 2011 and how I completely didn't listen. But I think you'll remember a bit of this. We went to Chicago and made an Azimyth record with Mr. Steve Albini,
Okay, yeah,
and
I do remember that actually. Yeah, yeah.
that
Because I was
that
still doing the afternoon show and the indie night in Canada at CFOX
right.
in 2011.
And I had phoned you from Chicago and said, "Hey man, do you want an interview with Steve Albini?" And you were like, "Hell yeah." That didn't happen, and I think I know why, but without mentioning names, we'll go into that you did a 5-minute interview with us before the Fox Seeds, and the station manager had cut your interview in half, and you phoned me just irate, and it was so awesome. You were so angry because you had done such a beautiful job. You would, here you were promoting this indie band. We're in Chicago, and you phoned me. You were so mad because this guy had cut your session. And it turns out that the reason he cut the session was because Clyde Hill was managing us and he had a beef with him.
No, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And the funny thing was, to Clyde's credit again, I still don't know what happened between the two, but
Well, I mean, I could probably take a stab at what it is. Is Clyde? Well, he was a bulldog, right? He had a
yeah,
way of getting things his way, and the station manager at the time probably didn't like that too much.
maybe.
But
I
that's
mean,
interesting. I honestly don't remember that, but it was probably like it was probably something like I'd recorded something in the can, and they were like, "Oh, it's probably too long, man," or whatever, and they probably just cut it. And I was like, "What the,
oh
like,
man,
really? That's my creative process. This is my show."
in all my years of knowing you, that had never happened. Like that was the first time that I'd ever seen where you had done something for an indie band, and it didn't matter that it was me, but just the segment was literally cut in half. And I remember you asking the station manager, you were telling me like he said to you it was because of Clyde, and you're like,
Wow.
that's just, yeah. So and it's funny that you mentioned that. I never saw that side of Clyde. Like I mean, if I needed like he set up a whole bunch of like press releases for that album. We did a bunch. I must have did. I was at a hotel actually in Vancouver, and we did
Okay.
interview after interview after interview, and he had set all this up for us, and
Well, that's it. He sets it all up because he was so good at what he
right,
did, right?
he was
But
so good at
behind the scenes stuff that the bands have no idea
no.
what he was doing and how good he was at doing it.
Yeah, well,
Pretty incredible.
he was accomplished, man. I mean, the fun part was, so in 2011, the
Yeah.
Fox Seeds, we won the fan favorite. We got the fan favorite vote. Azimyth with Save Me. Thank you for spinning that.
Yes.
Um, and for those that
That's
are too
good.
young to ever see this, this is Steve Albini's writing, and this is 2-inch tape from those sessions. And I
Dude,
still have these.
that's
And
incredible. Hey, like, holy shit.
and the person that mastered that record was Tom Baker, who did who's done every Nine Inch Nails record, Buddy Guy, Deftones,
Wow.
yada yada
So,
yada.
how did you manage to get into that circle then?
Pick up the phone. That's it. It turns out, so fun fact, Tom Baker's wife, hope you don't mind, Tom, she's from Burnaby.
Okay.
And it I now have this relationship where even through my studio now, he offers me indie rates for bands to get stuff mastered by him. So I mean, I always say when a young band comes in, look at the back of, I mean, who has CDs anymore, but look at the back of track listings, get that info, just send an email. You never know if you like something, whether it's mixing or producing or mastering, just reach out. You never know who you're going to talk to.
Well, like Gretzky says, you miss all the shots you don't take.
Damn straight. I also heard that he had a weak handshake. I remember you telling me that.
No, really?
Yeah. You said it was very limp. It wasn't firm.
Oh,
Other than
yes, I
that, he
do
was a
remember
cool
that.
guy.
I do remember that. Maybe he's just
Oh
having an
man.
off day.
Yeah, and then everybody's allowed to have an off day, right?
Sure.
But after so a bit about Azimyth. What was interesting, Clyde really told me, he said, why don't you record this album in Canada? Um, and he gave me a bunch of reasons. He's like, you could save money, first of all. You could use that for press. You could use it for so many videos, so many other things. But I was hell bent on Steve Albini and that experience. And I don't regret a single thing. I have stories from Steve Albini. I'm really sorry that he passed away. He had a heart attack at the studio. I talked to the guys there. I followed up with them like right after. Heather, I know, she's just devastated, man. There's so many people going now. And it's just,
Yeah.
I know the Chicago scene. What's funny is Steve's rate from 2011 hadn't changed to today.
Oh,
You could still get him for the same price. He viewed himself as an engineer. He had an online forum that you could go and write into it. If you had a question, he'd respond to you. At the time, Steve was playing, so he was playing poker online in between the sets, and the FBI froze his account while we were there.
no.
If you remember the Poker Stars thing. So Steve was a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
worried about how he was going to pay this month's nut. And he just, he was such an interesting guy. He used to turn around in his chair. You'd just be focused on the tune, and he'd spin around in his chair, and he's like, the most heroic amount of cocaine I ever saw somebody do was when I interviewed Hunter S. Thompson for the BBC. 4 8 balls and 2 bottles of champagne later, and well, it never aired, and he would just turn back around, and that was that. You didn't get to ask a question or, hey, Steve.
No follow up, but like, what the? Did I
No,
just hear that right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, and he would say stuff about Page and Plant, or it was so cool. I think Cheap Trick was doing a tequila commercial, so I think Rick came in um, at one point. But again, Clyde, to get back to Clyde, he, everything that he had told me was right. In the end, I could have spent the money more wisely. I should have made all those decisions, but being 20 something, again, he just let me do my thing. Fast forward to around 2014, and a little band called the Ghost of Blood Alley. and I know you were a big fan of that.
Fucking love that band, dude.
It I was surrounded by some of the best, six other musicians, and if I I can easily say I played with the best musicians I've ever played with in my life. Not one person made that band great. It was all of us together.
Hmm.
Um, Clyde saw that. Clyde saw our shows, the amount that we, engaged with the audience, the dancing that would happen, the drinking. Um, he kept booking us more and more and more shows at bigger venues. I think we actually one of the shows we played was venue where he brought out some label people to come see us.
Hmm. Hmm.
And his favorite song was I Don't Know Shit. And I remember we were at the well in Port Moody, and he said, that's a hit. And he put me in touch with a radio tracker, and I got to find out how that whole system worked. Because no one ever told me before even what a radio tracker does, or
Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
was just another, Clyde kind of letting you into that little world.
Yeah. So was Clyde like managing as well, or just helping book shows and stuff?
He was managing us. He was full on managing. Like he would book us shows. He was calling radio trackers. He was getting us like we got played all over the states, all over Canada.
Wow.
There's still a few sites like NM1, which is more popular back east. It's kind of like a I don't know, like Reverb Nation of the East, but the amount of fans that are still messaging us asking for new music, which is funny. I still have three incomplete songs in the
Oh,
can that I'll finish.
nice.
Um, but he again, that was mastered by Tom Baker. Uh, yeah, Clyde really looked after. If he wanted to manage you, he would tell you, and then he would again. He never forced you to do anything. He would guide you, and it was up to you to decide whether you wanted to do that or not.
Hmm. Hmm.
And how much I guess you listened to him is really how engaged he was. So he was a hell of a lot more engaged with the Ghost of Blood Alley than Azimyth, because I was just young and dumb and obnoxious. So that's yeah, man. I mean that whole experience, that and how much he really really liked that band, that meant a lot. And knew it felt like I was doing something right for the first time.
Right. Right. How old were you think, like, when you like were serious about getting into music? Maybe not necessarily in bands, or just like, and certainly not producing and owning Hawkins Sound Ranch and and everything else.
Right.
But how old were you when music grabbed you, I guess?
You know what? The first record that really that just blew my mind, and this is gonna people that are listening to this are gonna laugh at me. If you remember Sam the Record Man,
Of course. Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I went into Coquitlam Center and I had this tape, and nobody told me it. As far as I thought it was, it said INXS. So I went into Sam the Record Man and said, do you have this INXS, this Listen Like Thieves? And the guy was like, you mean in excess? I was like, I don't know. And that was the very first CD I bought. And I was probably, oh man, 15, 16. And that record changed my life. Like that was it for me. I got the bug.
Yeah. Yeah.
My 16th birthday, my first guitar was from Sears. It played like shit. My fingers used to bleed all the time from playing it. I still have that guitar. I don't know
You
why.
really?
Yeah, I do. Um, and that was, ever since then, I tried to, I always tried to put myself like with Azimyth. I was trying to motivate these guys to like, let's go on tour, let's do it, let's hit the road. And
Yeah.
I realized that like after I'd spent 30 grand going to Chicago and making this record, and I didn't ask the guys for shit. I said, I'll
Mm.
take care of it, I'll do it. This is a goal. And I learned real quick that they weren't interested in touring. Funny enough, later on,
Oh man, you should have known that before chucking 30K out.
dude, yes, again, and Clyde probably knew this. Clyde probably saw this. He probably talked to me about it. I was 19, and I was ignorant, honestly. I just didn't want to hear it. My belief was so just out there. I had to make it. I wanted to make it. That's my drive was insane. And I didn't realize that it wasn't with the same amount. The Ghost of Blood Alley was a bit different where we all had the same, we started off small and the goals were all the same. Unfortunately, kids came in, people got married, stuff happened, but I was more accepting of that because everything we had done up to that point, we had done together as a group, and it just felt better. And I think that's what Clyde saw. That's what Clyde was a lot more interested in the Ghost of Blood Alley, was because he saw how tight we were as a group making decisions together.
Have you ever been in a band where it was more than just you pushing things forward? Like, was Ghost of Blood Alley like that, or?
The only example I can give to that is when we were on the way to record the EP, we had a week left, and I wrote the fifth song. And I looked at the guys one night, and I'll never forget, we were sitting in my living room, and I was like, I think this needs a choir.
Oh,
And they all looked at me like I was mental. Like, but they also understood that I could hear something that they couldn't. This is when I started realizing that I was probably good at producing. The arrangements that were in my head, I couldn't translate that to people, but I just had this vision. So Rory worked with this church choir, and he brought them in, and they brought us cookies, and in 3 takes they had done what you hear on Win the War. And I'm
that's
so
cool.
impressed. I'm so
Wow.
impressed. But
So
I,
how do you pass that? Like, if it's just in your head and you're humming it. Like, how do you get that to people then? Like, how do you get what's in your head out?
so I was able to tell the choir what I was looking for, just by kind of singing it with them. And I still remember sitting in the control room, and I was crying, like tears of joy. It was the first time that something in my head was translating live, and I was like, oh my god, it's out of my head now, and I'm listening to it. This is
They're
amazing.
doing it.
They're doing it, and in 3 takes, like, it was insane. And my hat's off to these ladies. They got, I just gave them a little bit of direction, and it was enough where they did 3 different harmonies, and that's what you hear in the song today.
Wow. Wow. What would you say is your highlight in studio? Is that too hard to pick or what?
No, I mean, I think there's 2 things I'm most proud of. I'm proud of the so Dave Grohl talked about all these albums that were made in homes in the late 80s, like in Minnesota and Washington. All these punk records that we really love were just done in, some dude went to engineering school and built a recording console and bought
Mhm.
a couple mics. So if you can imagine, I don't even know what the square footage is. It was in a basement in a townhouse in Port Moody with 7 sweaty, ugly guys. Sorry, guys. And I recorded a song called Dark Spaces there. And that song I got mixed by friend Matt. It was mastered again by Tom Baker. That, to me, it's my most heartfelt and real song lyrically. My neighbor Donna used to say, the song's so short, it's only 2 minutes, so I want more. I did it on purpose. I wanted to leave the audience wanting more.
Sure.
Eric did a great job layering his violin and viola, and it's just this great soundscape. That from a personal note, that is the most proud I think I am of songwriting.
Mm-hmm.
On a recording level note, those 2 songs I did with Patchwork, I think they're a local band from Prince George. They uh they were just so easy to work with. They were a great bunch of people. They they never heard my work before. They just know this kid from the Lower Mainland moved up here, and he has this recording studio, so let's give him a try. And what came out was fantastic. They took direction really well. They um the whole the whole experience, just as a whole, they were so easy to guide, and it didn't take much.
Mm-hmm.
They had their songs down. um They really had their shit together. It was tight. It, they're that's another thing. Like they could play to a click. They knew the song. The direction that had was minimal. Where am I going to put this mic to sound like that? What kind of, and they were very eloquent in describing what kind of sound they were after.
Hmm.
So I think that would be my sort of proudest moment on that.
Yeah, and how like what do you think is like the hardest thing about trying to break as a band?
Oh God, easy. Today, I think you have to be everything from your own manager to videographer to social media person to it's not just about making the music anymore. Before you used to actually by the time Azimyth started in 2001, Sony Records were interested in signing us. Conditionally, they wanted us to make the album and then see what happened,
Yeah, of course.
right?
We'll help you,
Whereas,
but we don't want to get from the very beginning.
right. And that was the very start of that whole thing. I mean, Kid Rock, um, oh God, I can't remember, Jack White, all of them were doing DIY. And the funny thing is, I mean, we can go again back to Washington, that punk movement, when we're hearing, guys creating their own vinyls, flipping the cardboard, and they would hire all the girlfriends to come over and buy a
Yeah,
case of beer, and you're stuffing albums. That's what you need today. There's a band out of Minnesota, I think they're out of Minnesota, called Dury, Durry. It's a brother and sister, and I've been following them from the get-go. Like, they had nobody on Instagram, and they had this song, and it just blew up. I think actually Weezer just gave him a shout out the other day.
oh well.
And but all their videos are homemade. They're printing cassettes. Their cassettes look like little N64 cartridges. The amount of work that these two have done is insane.
Yeah.
It makes a guy like me feel tired just watching that. I'm just like,
The amount of work.
where do you get the energy for that? And
Sure.
it really is, like, I'm super proud of those two, because they book their own shows. They don't have management. They're everything they do is DIY. I mean, look at Oliver Anthony, Richmond, north of Richmond. I think I said that right, but he is selling out massive amounts of stadiums, festivals. He has a manager, and that's it. There is no record label, there's no funding. He did it from the grassroots, from being outside with his dogs in a creek in wherever the hell he was, Virginia,
Mhm, mhm.
and playing his guitar and writing a good song, and it captivated the world.
How like for the Ghost of Blood Alley, because for me, kind of being the guy that was helping you here in Vancouver, it seemed like you were really close to breaking. Like, was I far off on that, or was it a matter of
Oh.
like you just needed another five Todd Hancocks across the country?
If we had another, you know ego aside, when Clyde tells you that you have a hit, you believe it. And the feedback we got, when you start looking at the audience, and you've got metalheads, punks, country people, uh the demographic, I never in a million years would have guessed that. I could have, if you went to an Azimyth show, it was very clear who was attending our shows.
Sure.
The
Yeah.
Ghost of Blood Alley show, I mean, you had everybody that was from 19 to 60 something.
Well, you would almost get like a JRFM, like the country station in Vancouver. I'm sure would probably be
Right.
leaning that sort of way too, right?
Well, I remember we had a song on CBC radio, and all of a sudden everybody's phone starts going nuts. Dude, I heard you on CBC. Wow.
Wow.
And we had no idea. I had no idea that was going to happen. And it was nice to, again, back east was kind of picking up on it. And I'm still, like I said, I'm on NM1. We're still in the top. I think we're still in the top 10 for folk music on their website in Canada. And
Wow,
occasionally Dark Spaces still goes to number one, and it'll go
that's
back
crazy.
down,
So
go back up.
so is there going to be like a Ghost of Blood Alley cross Canada tour? Like, what's going on? Would you guys ever get back together, play some shows, or what?
We got, so Rory had a wedding last year, and all of us got together for the first time in probably 2 years, I think.
Yeah.
Because I went back to do some shows. Um a friend of mine, his wife served on the Parkinson's board, so me and Rory would go and play a couple benefit shows for Parkinson's. I didn't mind going down. I loved being a part of that. Oh man, you know what? If I would drop everything in a second to go do that. Are you kidding? I
No shit.
if I could write with those guys again, um, it'd be a dream come true. I miss all of them. We're still in touch. You know, when Clyde passed, the first text message I sent was to those guys.
Yeah.
Like my neighbor, in fact, it was my old neighbor Donna, who I think you know actually, and she knew Clyde.
Donna Mare?
Um, Donna, oh God, of course now I'm on the spot and can't remember her name, but Donna, if you're listening, I'm thinking about you. um, Hackala, Donna Hackala. That's what it is.
Hmm.
Might have been some time ago, but I know that she knows who you are.
Mhm.
Um, but she was the first one to send me a text and said, "Hey, did you hear?" Um, I didn't like Tommy. Tommy went to go see Clyde a few times before, so it was nice to get those updates. And I wanted to share some with you too. That so the Golden Spike Festival, everybody knows what it is. Big festival in Port Moody, happens every year. The A counselor at the time, who's now in MLA, had asked me and Clyde to speak on behalf of the music community, that we were called as experts and we were to speak on the festival. How could we help? How could we improve it? And I asked them a simple question. I said, are you still doing the festival because you think it has value and it's good for the community? Or are you doing it because it's just tradition and it's the same tired old thing? Because from my experience, from what I heard in the community, that they wanted to see a bigger, better bands, and they wanted to see local bands. Port Moody was saying, they're still call themselves the city of the arts, and I lived in Port Moody. I miss it, but they weren't promote. There were so many musicians within their own city, and they weren't getting on the bill ever. So fast forward, that Clyde had this idea and said, well, why don't we put on a concert? So we went down to City Hall, filled out a form, and over a year we kept going back and forth, filling out paperwork, doing costs, calling, everything from the police to the plumbing to the stage guy,
Security, all that shit.
everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it what it, that was such an amazing experience with Clyde. Clyde's knowledge again of all of this was far beyond. There was, if I had gone to do it, I would have given up.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
just his knowledge was just amazing. But I remember there's a photograph I posted that was of the night. We'll call it D-Day, where we went in front of the council to do our proposal. Every councillor in the room had a copy of the proposal, including the mayor. None of them had read it. The mayor opened up and questioned as to why we didn't approach the Golden Spike Committee and ask them to work with us, which we did, which is why we were told by them to do our own festival. So at the very end of the meeting, they basically said, you know what, we're going to change it. So the law, you have to be a charitable organization, a nonprofit, or you cannot put on a concert in Port Moody. And then thanked us for allowing them to change it and said good evening. And that was it. So they changed the law so we couldn't do
Wow.
it. Clyde was pissed.
Dude, the disrespect is through the roof, man. Don't even read.
Oh, didn't even read the notes in front of them. And I have to say, the counselor that told us there, I love you, man, but you chickened out. You should have stood up and asked them to do better, and they didn't. And it was just such a slap in the face. So we went we tuck our tails between our legs, went down to the well and had a drink with Riley.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We could have easily started a nonprofit, I guess, and like suddenly,
It
who knows?
just, Clyde wanted to be paid for his time, and that was their issue. They
Right.
they it was back then, and this would have been around 2014, 2015. Port Moody was spending something like between 15 and 20,000 on fireworks. So for that 5 minutes of fireworks, they were spending that. And
Mm.
we said, look, we can put on this massive festival. And Clyde's list of bands that he could get was massive.
Yeah.
So he was like, look, we could pull some really good talent and then showcase a lot of local talent, and we all make money at the end of the day. It wasn't a get rich thing. It wasn't, we just wanted to be paid for our time. And the city said, nah, well, how dare you? How dare you ask to be paid for your time? And that's when they changed it so that it could only be a nonprofit. They were, I, I still remember their jaws just dropping, like, how dare you?
It's so like, dude, man, like so frustrating because nonprofits still make money.
Yeah, yeah. It was, I don't understand it. Like, and the way that they were wording it, that's kind of what Clyde said. Clyde was shaking his head, and like the questions that they were asking him, he was just shaking his head. And he's like, you guys, the problem is, he said, and I'll never forget this. He said, you don't even know what you're talking about. You haven't looked at what we put in front of you. You're talking out of your ass, essentially. We're giving you solid numbers. It's not like we've just, you know, wrote puppies on the piece of paper and handed it in. We had a breakdown of every single expenditure. And we were asking the city for between 15 and 20 grand to put it on, which was their fireworks budget. And they wanted their fireworks more than a show.
Like, we put on this really cool show and let's just give everybody a sparkler and we'll call it a day.
Yeah. It's pretty much what it was. I mean, I have to say, like, Clyde and I were super proud about that. We busted our ass. The amount of meetings and paperwork, we met probably twice a month at the beginning, and then towards the end, I mean, we were meeting every other day, trying to finalize everything. We were calling everybody. We had all of our T's and I's dotted. It was, but yeah, the city just and that gets into the whole no fun Van City culture to me. And I think the way that I perceived it was they were looking like we were bashing the Golden Spike Festival, which we weren't. I wasn't trying to diminish what all those people had done and all the free labor that they've put in and their time. We weren't doing that. We were just saying there's a different way to do this. We think there's a better way. And I mean, you had Clyde Hill literally wanting to put on who better to put a concert on? The guy that's been doing it for 30 plus years.
And not only that, what would it matter to the Golden Spike anyway? Like, who cares? There's just something else that's cool in Port Moody.
I think they were offended when I asked them if it had value or if they were doing it because of tradition. And they had all felt that I was wrong in saying that, people enjoyed the festival. And I said, well, from my experience as the musician, as the guy playing these shows, as
Mhm.
I talk to the people going to these shows. They're not happy. They wanted to see bigger and better shows. They wanted to see more local talent. I mean, how many times can Chilliwack really play the festival? Like, come on.
Totally right.
Or Doug and
It-
the Slugs when Doug's dead. Sorry.
yeah,
R.I.P. Doug.
it's interesting. This a quick spin-off story myself. When I started the podcast, do you know the spot right next to the Red Truck Brewing? There
Yeah.
was like a big open field kind of, and I think they've done some stuff now. They've built there now. But when I first started in 2014, 2015, I had done the same sort of thing and did a little bit of legwork. Like, how would I need to start a Toddcast a Palooza and
Right.
like grab a headliner like I don't know, like a Hot Hot Heat and then get a couple baby
Right.
bands or whatever and a couple stages and shit. And like I was legitimately trying to start something, and I thought it would be like a once a year thing. And the hoops and the bureaucracy just shut me down. I just stopped even digging into it probably a couple of weeks in because I was like, holy shit, if we're already here, like my fucking brain already hurts.
Yeah.
It's
What
it's
was
funny that they shoot that sort of shit down when you've got people that are like, you know how to do it, are
yeah.
willing to do it. It's it's frustrating, man.
The interesting thing was, and I'll never forget this, I think it was like a day later, I might have been at Moody Ales, and I was approached by this guy and said, "Hey, I was at the meeting where you were turned down." I said, "Yeah." And I thought he was going to bust my balls about it. And he goes, "I actually work for the city of Coquitlam, and we're interested in putting on that show."
Oh,
And I was like, "Really?" And he said, "We've got casino money, man. Let's go."
so what
So
happened there then?
they were just I my if my memory serves me correctly, Lafarge Lake hadn't been finished yet, but the plans were on the table to be finished next year or the following year.
Mhm.
So I didn't know like where they were gonna have it. There was talk like, "Oh, were you meaning the stadium?" And the guy says, "No, no, no. We've got this thing. We're building it right now. It's going to be this outdoor amphitheater. You don't even the stage is done. So what? How much money do you need? Bring in the bands. Pay yourself. Let's go." And I remember talking to Clyde about this, and I think we just needed a year off from that, and then
Yeah,
I think
the
just
drive to do it kind of dwindled.
our cups were empty, man. I think
Sure.
that kind of just took the
It takes the
piss out of
wind
our
out of your
sails.
sails. Yeah. When you work so hard to get something done and you just kind of are just turned down, it sucks, man.
It was unfortunate, but I mean the positive spin on that was I got to learn a hell of a lot more about what it takes to actually put on an event. So I have a massive appreciation for anybody that does stuff like that, and to more your point about putting on a Toddapalooza, which by the way that'd be fucking amazing.
I was super
Um,
excited about doing it. I was so bent on doing it. I was just
dude, it would have been such a great idea, and the community. I mean, food trucks, artisans,
all that stuff.
booths, all that stuff. The amount of money people don't realize, but the amount of money that one single event can bring in for the community, the culture, the food, jobs. Why wouldn't you want to do it? We don't, I just it just floored me when these people that are in power couldn't even bother to read this thing, but they're the ones that up until that moment were encouraging us to keep going, do the paperwork, yada yada yada. I mean, they would have had to have known something, and when the day came they just acted like, "Oh my god, how dare you ask to be paid for it?" Like, come on. So I don't know, man. I hope that you haven't given up on that dream, because and if you haven't,
Wow.
Coquitlam might be the key to do that.
I don't know that there's going to be that anytime soon, but I do still love doing shows like the stuff I'm doing the Blue Light Studio in East Vancouver. Like
Right.
that is such an integral a big piece of what I do.
I
I've got
love
a show
that.
coming up this Friday, and like I look forward to every one of these shows because they're just so it's just so unique and like you walk out of that night and like you're blown away. I guarantee everybody that goes, they're like, holy shit, I didn't no idea that it was going to be this cool. I didn't know it was going to be like this night. I've applied for grants over the years and I've fallen short on each of them. And each time I'm like blown away that, because I'll get like letters from local artists, Todd Kearns and, you know, uh, Hot Heat, Steve Bays, and all these
Right.
guys that are like, Sean Varro, Wide Mouth Mason, like they're all like, here's Hancock, longtime radio guy. He's now podcasting. He's doing this thing. He's an integral part of the scene. Like, if I can't think of anybody else, I'd rather support, blah, blah, blah. And yet still I don't get it. So I'm at that
It's
like, it's really like I'm at, should I still apply? I guess I will, and I do apply begrudgingly, knowing that I'm not going to get it.
There from so there used to be a record label in Prince George here that its sole purpose was to write and apply for grants to the bands here, and
Okay,
they got it and continue to get it. The label's now gone because it just doesn't serve a purpose anymore, because everybody kind of once you get the door in, you're more likely to get a yes from now on.
totally.
My advice to you would be to talk to somebody like oh god, I'll have to remember the Ear Art Studios, and I
Oh,
apologize because I can't
Tim,
remember his name. Yes,
Tim Newhouse.
yes, Tim knows a lot about writing those grants. And if anybody's listening and wants to do a studio, or he's the guy to talk to about that. He's very knowledgeable. He gets the
Mm.
grants, and he definitely knows about what bands need to say or not to say. He's the guy to talk to, dude.
Oh, okay, interesting. I know Tim. Okay, okay.
I still got my foot in the door a little bit. I might live 8 hours
Yeah, yeah.
north, but
So are you up there for good, do you think, or what?
I sold my townhouse and bought 43 acres in a brand new home. I built
You
this
have
amazing
40
recording studio.
acres, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had
Wow.
I had another recording console that was a Trident 24A, and that was built in England by Malcolm Toft, same as the board that we can talk about in a bit behind me.
Yeah.
And I I have a new business partner that's actually out of Chicago, named Seneca, and we started discussing about having a destination studio. And kind of the old saying is, you know where to find gold, you go where the gold is, go where the gold miner is. So I'm in the north. There's not a hell of a lot of money here, but I'm not doing it for the money anyway, man. I mean, I love what I do. But getting those corporate gigs, turning into a destination studio, that's always been kind of the dream. And we've got a spare bedroom up here. We use it as a B&B, and then just make music. That's really the dream, and that's what we've been doing. I've been down for a bit because we're working on this damn thing, trying to get it
Yeah.
going. I won it in an auction. I still can't believe that, but
Is it up and going? Because you were talking, you needed a couple things. I was like, hey, dude, if you need my circle, man, like just let me know. I'll dig around, right?
it oh, my wife's looking at me. Hello, wife. We no, we it needed it needed a power supply. It didn't come with one, and when it got here, we took apart all the channels out, and there was like about a 2-inch section where it looked like it had some water damage.
Mm,
Luckily, it really didn't hurt too much. So I've got a guy here named Pat. He's God, without Pat, there wouldn't be a studio. And he kind of rewired it. And then I got in touch with Malcolm, the guy that actually built it's a Trident 80B behind me. It's the Sound of Rock. Buck Cherry has one. Billy Joel Armstrong had one. I think he just sold his. They're a great board. But Malcolm rebuilt the power supply so it runs better. So we plugged it in, and the moment we plugged it in, it started smoking. And I was like, no,
works too good.
it works too good. And the only thing wrong right now is we can't get the phantom power going. So that's the only thing that's holding this whole thing up. Pat
Was
currently
that an issue?
has it's what runs essentially the entire board. Any mic that needs phantom power has to have 48 volts running through it, which
Oh,
is most microphones. I'm
yeah.
not sure, but I think even your microphone might require some good old phantom power.
This one might.
Oh, yep, there you go. That one does. Yep.
Yeah. This is just a blue mic.
Okay, right. Well, it plugs into USB, right?
It does. Yep.
It'll have phantom power for sure.
Ah,
So I mean, we got everything else running. There's three little red lights. They kind of do different things, but they're two of them are working, whereas before they weren't. So that's a great sign.
yeah.
But it's oh
Getting
man,
there.
it's one thing after another.
So
But
like test it out. That's working. Now that's not working. Fuck. Now that one's working. Working.
there
That's not working now.
there was a little nut
Ah.
that I had missed that had just, I guess, in shipping had dropped there, and that's what fried the board when we turned it on.
Oh,
So now we just have to figure out what fried and where. Um, and we're close. But I've talked to like the desk doctor in LA. He was directing me to, so Billy Bob Thornton has a Trident 80B. He was friends with Frank Zappa, which I guess we should start there. This is Frank Zappa's recording console. This was
that's
the
amazing.
album that was recorded on that console. And for those of you who don't know, that's Joe's Garage. Um,
What the? How did you get hooked up with this thing?
oh man. So as with all good decisions, I got drunk one night and I saw that there was this on Julian's auction, there was this recording console, and it was for 10 grand. And like
Whoa.
these things are 35,000 minimum just to start. And
Yeah.
I just thought, how the hell is Frank Zappa's recording console going for 10 grand? So I threw in a bid. I was sitting at Earl's, my phone goes off. It says you've won. I looked at the waitress and went, I'm a fucking dead man. This is the last time you're going to see me. My wife is going to kill me. She didn't. I told her about it beforehand. She was just as surprised. By the time the conversion and shipping and their fee, we're sitting close to 30,000 right now.
Mm,
And
mm.
I still have to buy the cables for it, which I think we're gonna do a GoFundMe for them. I know there's a lot of Frank Zappa fans. We have to get the power supply issue. Once that's done, this board is ready to go.
Sweet.
Yeah, we're super happy. I'm super excited. So I want to get cracking music on it. Plus, it's a piece of musical history, and it's sitting in Prince
Dude,
George of all
it's
bloody places.
right behind you.
It's right. I can touch it. It's weird.
That's so
If it
rad.
if it could talk, and I mean, it's pretty cool to see. I've got the manual, and there's still some of Frank's handwriting still in the manual here,
Dude,
just which is kind of cool.
that's
Um,
very cool.
I don't understand any of it, so don't ask me. That part is
Yeah, yeah.
well beyond my. I can work it. I can make music. I The schematics are a whole different story, but if it weren't for Pat, and I gotta thank that man. He's really, when he saw what we had, he was all on board, and he's like, this is a piece of rock and roll history. We have to get it running. And
Yeah.
Malcolm, and shout out to Malcolm Toft. I mean, the guy that invented these beautiful recording consoles. Nirvana's Bleach was recorded on a Trident 80B.
Mm,
Jack and Dino still has his in Seattle.
mm.
Nirvana Nevermind was recorded on a Trident A range, which I believe Butch Vig just sold, actually. So there's quite a bit of
Have you
history.
watched that whole Butch Vig thing where he goes
Oh,
through the album and like messing around, showing like the double up on vocals with
dude, I
here's
still
Kurt, here's Dave, and like fuck, it's so good. Hey, like
I still get
it's so good.
chills, man.
Yeah,
I still get chills. I mean, when we were with Steve Albini too, I was really conscious not to ask him any Kurt questions, but he would talk about. I could see that he obviously knew that we were fans,
yeah.
and
He wanted
occasionally,
to share.
yeah, like there was a miking technique. If you listen to All Apologies, there's Kurt's quiet, and then when he gets louder, you can hear the room opened up and expand. And that's a compression trick that Steve was really well known for with the Pixies and Bush. And he just, I love that little compression technique that he does. And
Mm,
it's just creating extra space where you've got up close, and then once it reaches a certain decibel, the room opens up, and then he's got the room mics going, and you can hear that on In Utero. Which, funny enough, when I took recording school, my teacher started off with, the best recorded album of all time was AC/DC's Black and Back in Black. The worst album recorded of all time was Nirvana's In Utero.
no, really?
I spent like 45 minutes arguing with him till I was red in the face, like, you're fucking out of your
Yeah,
mind.
you have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, like, and I get it. Like, Jean Fluvog that used to run Fluvog or Vaudeville Studios, he he hated the drum sound. it bugged the shit out of me. He's like, "Ah, it's a terrible sound." I'm like, "But it sounds like the drums are right there. Listen to Bush. Listen to the Pixies. Those are great sounding classic records."
Oh yeah.
But the hell do I know, man? I'm just a guy that's living in Prince George.
Where did you take school? Did you go to Nimbus?
I went to it was CDIS that was closed down. If you remember, the FBI shut it down in the States and Canada because they essentially they were telling people that we were spending $15,000 to $30,000 for this job, and I'll never forget being in class, and my teacher one day said, "If any of you think that you're gonna make more money than a worker at McDonald's, you're out of your fucking mind." And I was like, "Why?
What?
Why am I here? What? What do you mean?" And he was dead serious.
Wow.
And I think that was the main reason they closed it, because essentially it was just a money grab.
Mm,
I'm glad that I did it because I, you know I use the analogy that kids today, or anybody that has a digital camera, you can point and click that thing and get amazing pictures, but oftentimes you'll see the photographer, he's taking 1,000 pictures in one go.
yeah.
He doesn't understand what the camera and its functions really do.
Mhm,
Whereas if you had an analog DSLR or SLR, sorry, you have to understand the aperture, you have to understand the lighting, you have to understand how to physically use this thing.
mhm,
And if you don't understand that, it, when you do understand it, instead of taking those 1,000 shots, you may only take five, but you can get that shot. And the same thing I can tell with anybody that wants to get into recording. Anybody can get a plugin and use, they're all default settings. If you want to sound like Daryl Thorpe that produced Adele and Foo Fighters, there's a plugin for that. If you want to
sure.
sound like, you know, whoever. But if you don't understand what that tool does, you're never going to be better than, anybody. You're never going to excel.
Mhm, mhm.
Put in your time, do the 10,000 hours, research, ask questions. There's so many things online, although online is just, I feel bad for anybody with a question because it's just toxic as hell, as I'm sure you know.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Online.
Anytime you ask a question, these new guys just get eaten alive, and how does that help them? It doesn't help anybody. So
Not at all.
I try to, the Instagram threads I actually really like because I find that it's a lot less toxic. And if anybody has questions there and they want to shoot me a line, by all means, the Hawkins Sound Ranch, I'll talk to you all day long about whatever you want to know.
Yeah. Yeah. What was your first concert you went to, buddy?
Tom Jones.
Okay. No way.
And
Yes,
having
sir.
Tom Jones, Queenie Theater, 5 years old, and I will never forget women throwing their underwear and panties, and my mother having to explain to me what the fuck is going on.
Totally right.
And I was like, "This is the best job ever."
Yeah.
That it just floored me. Right after that, I saw Tommy as well,
Wow.
and that was, man, that was amazing. Yeah, my mom took me to that too. That was phenomenal. Um, I remember Spirit of the West. I got to see John Mann. Their last one of their last shows was for CBC, and it was called the Took Sessions. And John had, full on Alzheimer's. And at one point, at the very end of the show, he closed his eyes and he sang one of the verses from Of Mice and Men when he performed in that. Dude, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. That dude was. There's another guy in Vancouver that gone too soon.
Yeah.
I miss. I mean, come on, man! St. Patrick's Day. What are you doing? We're going to the Commodore. We're gonna go watch Spirit of the West play on home ice, and we're
Yeah.
gonna get drunk and have a great time. John's gonna kill it, and oh man, I miss him. I miss Clyde. We had such a great scene, and I know that there's a lot of killer acts coming out. Let me ask you this: who's on your radar right now?
Oof. Wow. Okay. There's so many on my radar right now. What genre?
God, pick. How about folk? Let's go with good old folk.
Oh, okay, that gets a little bit harder. Greg Drummond is always. I mean, he's not necessarily folk, but Greg Drummond is really good. Focus Your Audio is quite good
Yeah.
in that kind of vein.
How about
Uh,
some good old punk rock, man?
yeah, really into well, punk rock. I mean, you can't get away from Another Joe, of course, is fucking rad. Total Shock just played a show for me. They were amazing. There's a band called Cloud Sick that's very
Clouds?
cool in the scene. A band called Murderers that's very good in the scene. I'm liking the latest album from Sadie Campbell. You know, say who Sadie is.
No.
Um, Joan Bessie is always really amazing. She's got some great stuff. She's an incredible performer. There's a girl named Carol Bateman who made my radar about maybe half a year back. She's really, really impressive. Great singer, great songs. I think she's going to go far. Dude, there's so many, man. There's so
That,
many
that's
rad
so
bands.
good
And
to
there
hear.
always has been, right? Like, you know, I've been
Yeah.
here since like the mid to late 90s. Like I got here in 95, 96. Fucked off to Prince George for few years there and Victoria for a year and stuff. But other than that, I've been here the whole time pretty much, right? And the whole time there's always been bands. You just got to know where to look, I guess. Or, you know, like you say, we're talking about the no fun city in Vancouver. Well, yeah, unless you know where to go. But
Right.
I don't know. I've never felt Vancouver's a no fun city, but I also know fucking tons of people.
I think for me, like if you look at all the venues that I played in the almost 20 years of being active in the scene. I mean, Richards on Richards is gone. Piccadilly's is gone. Malone's is gone.
Media Club gone.
The Media Club gone.
Buffalo Club
Um,
gone.
Buffalo Club. Oh, the Buffalo Club.
Dude,
You know,
fuck, I saw a
Pub
big wreck at the
340.
Buffalo Club. Pub 340.
Oh,
I think Pub 340 still may be doing some stuff,
is
but
are they?
I think that I
Is
saw
the
something
floor
like
still sticky as fuck?
thick as fuck, man. Yeah, but I saw like man at pub
The
or at the Buffalo
Brickyard.
Club, Brickyard, another great venue. That's so many, right? There's so many that they're just gone,
They're gone. And
gone.
you know
Like
the
even the
the
railway.
dude, the to me,
So many rad shows at the railway, man. Like
dude,
so many amazing shows, and then COVID gone.
gone. And to me, the railway had, I mean, that plaque when you walked up the stairs and it said, "This was the house of tragically hip REM, Spirit of the West." The Spirit of the West wrote a song called "The Station" about the railway club.
Right.
Um, I'm surprised the city didn't step in and say, "This is a heritage site. We're taking it over," or whatever.
Something.
Let somebody else something.
Yeah.
I mean, that place to me was hallowed ground. I had the privilege of playing there twice. Um, I can't when that went under, I was like, that's a shame. We almost lost the
Mind blowing.
Commodore, right?
Right.
Remember that?
Yeah.
I can't imagine losing the Commodore. I mean, you open from the Muddy Banks of Wishkah and the Nirvana three piece. That's right on the Commodore. That's on the fucking album.
Totally.
Everybody that of course, 5,000 people say they were at that bloody show,
Yeah. 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 Holds
right?
only 1,200, but 5,000 were there.
Yeah, and I mean, it's history. Like I had a friend that was painting the stage, and he called me up once and said, "Hey, you've never played the Commodore, right?" And I said, "No," and he went on Spotify and hit the Ghost of Blood Alley, and he said, "Well, now you have."
That's great.
It's like, that's welcome back. I also 3 Inches of Blood. I welcome back, guys.
Okay.
When we were in Chicago, I got a phone call from their guitarist, and he was like, "Hey, meet us at this bar." And God,
Was
that
that Matt?
it was Tim or
Tim?
Justin. Sorry, Tim's his brother. It was Justin, and Justin called me, and he's like, "Hey,
Turn up,
man, I heard
man.
you're in Chicago," and yeah, that was a blast. But they're
Yeah,
back. They're back now
They're
too,
back too. Yeah, they're playing. I think they're doing something in December because I was poking Matt from Pride Tiger,
right?
who's in a band called Worse with I can't remember now who it is from 3 Inches, but anyway, I was like, "Hey, you guys want to play a show?" And he's like, "Ah, fuck, we can't because Buddy's doing something with the 3 Inches of Blood." And I was like, "Oh fuck, they're back. They're doing stuff again."
Right. And I remember in
Love
at
that
that
band.
time, they were telling me like Justin was like he at that time he was saying it was hard to do these shows because he's looking at the venue and what's on the wall coming up in the week, and he's like, if I had $20, I would go see any of these other bands over us. And he's like that was so hard to do in the States. Like they were just barely breaking even back then. And I mean, look how that's the other thing. Like, how many shows are you seeing that are getting canceled right now? It's fucking crazy. Where people just aren't showing up. So are the ticket prices too much? Or
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Ticket prices are
definitely
too much, and groceries are too much, and gas is too much, and like you start to be like, "Oh, am I to feed my kids, or am I going to go check
right.
out the Kings of Leon show?" Well,
Oh,
I guess my kids are gonna starve for that week because I'm going
speaking
to
of
the fucking Kings of Leon, baby.
Kings of Leon, funny. Okay, so the first time they came was at Dick's on Dick's, Richards on Richards.
Okay, wow,
Jet was opening for them. So
nice.
keep in mind that nobody knew who Kings of Leon were. They had these 70s CCR haircuts. Jet comes on, and I'll never forget. Their drummer comes out with a bottle of beer and a cigarette in his hand, and there's this woman talking in the audience, and he shushes her, and they break into a song, and it was fucking rock and roll. Afterwards, I'm up on the balcony, and the guitarist and the lead singer are there. And he said, "Hey, what do you think about this band, Kings of Leon?" And honest to God, whatever shit they were playing was terrible. It was nothing like they are now. Like their haircuts sucked. I couldn't understand. He was mumbling through his words, and I was like, "Nah, they suck." Well, fuck me, was I wrong? Fast forward to 2 years later, and Sex is on Fire, and they're
Right,
blown up. Their hair's cut. You could hear everything they're saying. Their
yeah. But
musicianship had totally changed.
suddenly they come back to Vancouver and they're fucking opening up for
Yeah.
Me Too.
Yes.
Yeah,
Like mind blown.
yeah.
That band that I saw back then on that crappy little stage. But and then like, where's Jet? Oh yeah, they're playing again, by the way. Which
They probably made their money and called it a day.
yeah,
They had a couple big songs, man. Like you make some good money when you get to number ones, right?
they did. I mean, I know the two brothers were, I don't know, they were fighting about something. One went to LA. He
Uh,
did, I don't
Nick
know
and
what he
Chris.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they um, you never find out what happened, but I guess one of them didn't want to go on the tour or couldn't. He was sick, or so they were saying. So they went without another drummer. But I think they're, as a band, they're all back together now and playing. And from the shows, they man, they look better than ever.
Hmm.
They got their shit together. Their sound is just as good as they were back then.
That's killer. Yeah, good band.
Great band. I mean, I love, that's the one thing I miss about living in Prince George is the live music, man. There's a
Yeah,
lot of
probably
indie
few and
stuff
far
here.
between up there, I bet, hey?
I, Ice Cube came, or Ice T, or whoever.
One of those ice
One of
man.
the Ice was just here. Brian Adams played, but I
Oh,
mean, like, um, I miss going to see Foo Fighters. I would love to go see Foo Fighters. You
yeah.
know, I would. It's just that 8 hour drive, and with the cost of everything today is ridiculous. Like you were
It
saying.
really is, man. You got to pick and choose, right? Like even though there are a lot of really good shows coming through Vancouver, it's like, holy man, I can't like, take my family out to a show and it's like a $600 night, $700 night if you're grabbing some t-shirts and shit. Like can't do that too many times in a month.
No, and I mean, I know that Eddie Vedder just posted about. He was saying that right after COVID, that they went back to suppliers that they had used for years, and every one of them had almost doubled their price. And he's like, I know that we fought Ticketmaster. I know that I've tried to keep my ticket prices cheap,
Mhm.
but when eh, you know we want to play shows. So if we want to do these shows, this is the price for that. But I mean, people are going to less shows. They're really choosing hard what they want to see and what they don't want to see.
Yeah. I know
Which,
a lot of people were complaining about the prices of Pearl Jam and specifically mentioning that, like, well, here's this
right?
band that took on Ticketmaster and fucking Q15 20 years later, like suddenly they're $300 to go see a band. Like, it's like, well, yeah, that's the way it is though. Like, that's every band on the planet now. Every single show is $120 to get in.
Do you think? I know that Rick Beato got in some shit recently. Old man yells at cloud for. Uh,
I love that guy, man. I think
I
he does a
love him
great job.
too, man. And he
He's
did
got
a
a
video
huge
on
following
what's
too.
wrong with music, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he got a shit ton of backlash from that. I personally, as a musician, and I was going to ask your take on this. Do you feel that is music any better? Has it gotten worse? And not subjectively. And I'm not talking about, our parents hated, when my parents were listening to the Beatles, their parents hated the Beatles.
Mm.
I'm not talking about that, but do you think that is rock music dead? Let me ask you that.
No.
Right. I agree.
No, rock's not. I mean, I don't think that music's any worse than it was. I think that there's just more channels that show mediocre.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and I think that that's what it is. I think that music has lost something. There's no more like sitting in front of a, record sleeve and reading the liner notes and following along with the lyrics and, oh, that's cool, it was recorded here and this was the producer and all that shit. Like, that's gone. I think that's gone, right? So I think the like music's more dispensable.
Yeah.
I'm looking for it.
Dispensable. Yeah, yeah, I
Just-
would. And that's sort of what Rick was getting at, right?
yeah, like I think that it's that. I think that there's still really good music. I think you just need to listen to the Toddcast to find it.
Well played,
No, but
man.
seriously, I think that there's really good music. It's just a lot of it just doesn't get serviced, or it's few and far between, or
I'll tell
the
you what
I
really
don't know.
bugs me now, and maybe you've noticed this as well. Songs today. Like I had a client of mine recently. She was like, "Well, I think my vocals are too. They're not loud enough in the mix." And the vocals where they sit in the mix compared to the music are so much louder today. And you'll notice that the when the singing comes in is a lot quicker for attention spans.
Sure.
Something has to grab you instantly. Every Taylor Swift song, not knocking Taylor Swift, I think she's great at what she does. In fact, I'm a fan. But her vocals time that shit. Less than 20 seconds each song comes in. There's no intro. But then I listen to somebody like Coulter Wall, Motorcycle, there's a 30-second intro of him just twanging on the guitar, and when his voice hits in, god damn, it hits you like a ton of bricks. And that Canadian boy, if there was ever somebody I'd love to work with, it would be Coulter Wall.
Mm,
God, he's fantastic. A good old Saskatchewan cowboy, man. No
no,
social media, doesn't do interviews, just plays music and records. And I mean, it speaks for itself. His playing and voice are unbelievable. But I've wondered, Rick got a lot of shit for that interview, and I don't think that he's wrong. I think that rock isn't dead; it's there.
no, rock's not dead.
You
Um,
just have to look harder for it.
yeah, you just got to know where to look, I guess, right? And I think that radio has a lot to play. No, I don't want to shit on radio now, but I will. Like, it has a lot to do with why music's the way it is.
Right.
You can't keep playing the same 400 songs and expect people to
God.
stick around, right? Like, Metallica sold 12 million or 14, 20 million of the Black Album, but you only play Enter Sandman.
Right. Yeah. How many times do you need your master puppets?
Like, how many times you got to hear Sweet Child of Mine? Like, literally spin the dial on Appetite and play any other track. So I think that that's partially radio is partially to blame for where music is today.
Well,
Because
if it weren't for
they
people
don't
like you,
push and test their audience.
yeah, look what you did at the Fox with the indie scene. I mean, indie night in Canada, we used to stay up to midnight and listen to that shit.
Yeah.
What band is Todd going to put on now? Who's he going to talk about? Everybody tuned into that. That was our, if you were a musician and you wanted to know what was the pulse in the underground, you were on it.
Mhm.
Where are these guys anymore? They're not on the radio. They're doing what you're doing, which, and by the
Yeah.
way, like, I my hat's off, man. I love that you're still promoting it. You're still the guy out there. You're another Clyde Hill. You've constantly done it for what? How long have you been doing this now? 30 years?
30. Yeah.
30 years.
That's crazy, right?
Fuck yeah. That's
Well, 30
insane.
years next year, 95. I started
Dude.
radio. Yeah.
You know what, man? Cheers to that. Cheers to Clyde. I
Cheers,
hope you're
brother.
around for another 30 years, man.
Yeah,
That's
man. Love it.
fantastic.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go changing anytime soon, man. I love the indie scene. I love what we do in Vancouver, and I'll keep pushing it until I want to retire, I guess. That's not gonna be for a bit.
You know, in Canada, what I'm really surprised with being in Prince George, and I know a lot of people shit on the town. It's a blue collar place. It is changing. A lot of the people that I've met are in similar stories like me that just wanted a cheaper living.
Yeah.
That's I mean, the kids in Prince George can't afford to live in Prince George now. Buying a home is now off the table to them. Like, what I bought my home for 43 acres for 450, 545, and now it's double that, right?
That's crazy, man.
Brand new house, 20-foot shop, 545,
Wow.
and that was eight in 2018.
Yeah. That
And
would get
now,
nothing here in
no,
Vancouver.
no,
Nothing. I don't even know if you can get something for 540 in Abbotsford.
I don't think so.
I don't
Not
think so.
anymore. But the scene here, I was surprised with, like, how many good, like, not just good, but fucking great players are here. Good songwriting, good lyrics. Um,
Mm.
I'm constantly surprised by the the younger generation. I mean, I definitely feel like the old guy in the crowd.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but a lot of the guys, a lot of people here want to still play with me. They're, when I first moved to Prince George, I wanted to play. I didn't have a guitar. All my shit was still in storage. I went down to Trench Brewing and I was like, can I play? And this lady came down. She introduced herself and said, hi, my name is Bailey. And I said, oh, hey. And I told her my story. I said I was in the Ghost of Blood Alley. I did this thing. Um, you know, could I play? And she had this guy literally got so drunk and played and then asked for money for a cab home. And she was a little hesitant, and I was like, look, my rule is I don't get drunk. I'm really I view myself as an extension of Trench Brewing. I'm there as an employee to represent you. And she goes, look, I can't pay you. We just opened too, but I'll tell you what, when you pack the room, I'll write you a check. Within 1 month, I had the room packed, and she was good on her word and wrote a check. And it revived the music scene in Prince George. Everybody started doing open mics again. More bands were playing. Um, the other Irish bar in town, they were flying people in from Alberta to come play at their venue rather than hire their own local people.
Wow.
That started changing. So
And does local radio support Prince George bands?
big time, big time. So they're I forget the name of the radio station. Genevieve from Patchwork, actually, she's the station manager there. She just told me that they got funding for another year. Congratulations, that's
Oh,
fantastic. Um, the advertising for somebody like me, it's stupid expensive. I think that's their only downfall, that they could get a lot more business if they're
yeah.
they're still acting like it's chorus entertainment.
Yeah, man. Radio's expensive.
Yeah, and it's just, you can't, I don't, in this day and age, I don't think you can ask for that.
I think it's, yeah, I was just going to say, like, it's expensive. And I also don't, and it's not just because you're a sponsor of the podcast, but I also don't think that radio is as effective as online,
No.
because so many people they're just on their phones all the time. You see an ad, like, you'll see an ad way before you'll hear an ad on the radio,
Right.
right?
Right. And I
So
mean,
I think it's almost more effective now at this point to go online marketing, regardless of what your company is.
absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. I mean, the nice thing about my website is every time somebody visits it, my phone goes off and I get this weird bing, but I can tell that it's it's from the sponsoring through you. I'm getting, I had people from China the other day, China, Sweden, New Jersey was yesterday. Like, there's no way that they're finding my little shitty studio, um, you know, on online just
By
by Googling it
chance.
by chance.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
your listeners are pulling in that, and I think it's a better audience for what we're doing here. Like, you kind of gave me my new slogan, which was, uh,
Commercial sound on an
what is it?
indie budget.
Commercial sound on an indie budget. I And that's exactly what I've tried to do. My wife and I spent a lot of money, over 100K building this studio, investing in it, buying the microphones, the guitars. I hadn't intended to buy Frank Zappa's board, but here we are. Um, I'm
That's great.
I I still can't believe I'm still shaking my head a bit. I still can't believe I did that, but here we are.
Yeah.
And I don't think Frank, if Frank was still around, I don't think he'd envisioned that his board would end up in Prince George of all places. But the
Yeah.
community's changing. Like I said, the amount of talented musicians here is unbelievable. Well, my dogs have escaped, but
Nice.
it's amazing, and to find that local talent to work with them. And then it's not just Prince George, it spreads all over within, my goal is kind of a 500-kilometer radius. Wherever I can find somebody, and I'd like to be a destination. Our airport is 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
You can stay with us, feed you, and really just get down to making music. That's the exciting part. And there's so many good writers, and I think that's the most important thing. The only advice that I would give you is you really, really got to get your shit together to be here. You have to play to a click. You have to, work as a team. You have to be together. We did Ghost of Blood Alley did 5 songs in 2 days, which is
Wow.
unheard of.
Wow.
And again, that's not me. That's me and 6 other guys that are all at the peak of their playing. That's, so I can come from that experience and say I know what it takes. I remember asking Steve Albini, I said, "What did you check us out before?" And he said, "No, never heard of you." And I said, "Well, what if I sucked? What if it was just absolute shit?" And he goes, "Well, I guess that's on you, and you just wasted 30 grand."
Yeah.
It's no skin. And I asked him, "Have you ever had that?" And he said, "No, because the way I look at it, if you're going to come here, travel, spend the money, you better have your shit together."
Right.
And I think that goes with anywhere. There's a lot of good studios. Unfortunately, the real big ones, they're going under. It's that budget just isn't there anymore, which is kind of what you were getting at earlier, the DIY aspect. If you're a young band, unfortunately, you guys got to buck up. You got to finance the album, and it has to be good.
Oh, it has to be.
It has to be good. There's
Because
the
when you get into a
mediocre,
music meeting, you're going up against Foo Fighters. You're going up against
right?
all these bands that are, yeah, guaranteed their songs are going to be solid. So you need to sound as good as all these other bands, regardless of if you have 15 followers or 15 million. It doesn't matter. It needs
And
to sound
that's
good.
and that's sort of, that's kind of the other thing that I wish that I can't emphasize more enough is, people try not to come in the studio and say I want to sound like this. Sound like you. Don't You can like Taylor Swift or Foo Fighters, but don't be them. Don't ask for your vocals to sound like that. Don't Just focus on being you. Whatever your sound is,
Yeah.
whatever that performance is, that's that's what we're trying to capture in that magic. We can give you that over compressed drum sound. We can give you the big vocals, but your overall sound, don't try to mimic. I mean, I see it on American Idol all the time when and Katy Perry calls it all the time where, who's imitating Amy Winehouse?
Hmm. Hmm.
We've all heard that a million times, especially if you go to an open mic, but occasionally you'll find that one person who just, I work with a girl, Susie, and she's she's working on a song now. I think it's finished. She doesn't. That's fine. But she has a hell of a voice. The song is strong. I'm super proud of her. It's called Woman. I remember I was sitting, had my back turned. She was doing sound check, and the moment she sang, I turned around and was like, "Who the fuck is this?" That's how impactful her voice was. And the other thing is, something that somebody once told me. I remember singing to the microphone, and over the headphones, I hear Corey. I want you to try it again, but I don't believe you. Those words have stuck with me since.
Hmm. Hmm.
When I record you and you're doing vocals, we need to believe you. That's got to stand out today. And I think you and I, of all the music we've listened to, I think we can both agree the reason we love music so damn much. We
Sure.
believe you when you say that, when you hear Kurt scream and do that guttural thing, or you hear, Metallica play master puppets in the guitar, whether it's speaking through the guitar or whether it's Jesse Cook and doing flamenco on guitar. I saw him at the Orpheum once. That was just pure magic. But you believe them when they were playing, you believe them when they're singing. And that's the best advice that I can give to artists today, is just be damn good at your instrument, play, do the 10,000 hours, be your
Yeah.
best, because like you said, there's going to be the Foo Fighters, you're competing with them.
Yeah. Straight up. Yeah.
There's my advice for you, man.
Corey, I'm going to wrap this up, buddy.
Hell yeah.
So good to see you. I wish you lived closer so we could actually hang and have a beer and
Dude, one day I will when things aren't so bloody expensive, I try to come down at least once a year, if not twice.
well,
um,
next time let me know.
I will actually. And I want to thank you again for doing this today. And I just last minute again, here's the Clyde, man.
Yeah, my beer's empty, but to Clyde.
To Clyde Hill, man. And wherever he is, I know that he's watching us, and you know he was such a force in the music scene, and he'll be damn missed, man.
He will be. He will be. Corey, love you, brother. Thanks for supporting the podcast.
Love you too.
Hawkins Sound Ranch, all your commercial sound on an indie budget. I love that. That's the slug line. That's so good, man.
And once I get this thing back up and running, you and I will have to do this again. And I can't wait to show you what
I
gets
was
done
gonna
on
say,
this
yeah,
thing.
like walk me through and shit. That's fucking rad.
Hell yeah. We should get you up here sometime, man.
I like that idea too.
Yep. Hell yeah.
Okay, bud. Well,
Until
have a
then,
good night. Good to talk to you. I'll tag you when we're throwing this stuff around.
cheers, man.